Hello, my name is Crystal Ferreras from Commercial Food Sanitation, and I want to welcome you back for the last time in our series of short videos about COVID-19. Since you have now learned about the mode of transmission in Video 1 from Deanne and prevention methods in Video 2 from Richard, Nathan Miradamati from our team at CFS is now going to talk about some considerations regarding the remediation of COVID-19. We hope that these videos have been both educational and thought-provoking on how your company or facility can best manage through this pandemic. Now, I will turn it over to Nathan.
We're going to begin the discussion on the remediation of a potential or confirmed case of COVID-19 in the workplace by first reviewing some potentially obvious but yet critical reminders regarding personal protective equipment, or PPE. I do not think it comes as a surprise when I say to anyone who's attempted to purchase particular products that in the past have been readily available at the supermarket, but a dramatic change in both the supply and the demand has disrupted supply chains. If you have not done so already, we recommend reviewing the buffer stock levels and the lead times on your current PPE and making sure those points are sufficient. In addition, it would be advised to look at secondary procurement or substitutable products so that if and when the desired product cannot be obtained, there are still supplies available. Next, there's a definite preference in tools for single-use or disposable items. If in fact disposables cannot be obtained, then the use of reusable items is acceptable, but the tools must be cleaned and disinfected after use. A couple of additional thoughts regarding PPE that are commonly missed but critically important during this time. It's important that personnel should always be aware that they should notify management immediately if there's any breach in their PPE. Also, remember that the PPE specified in the SDS or the safety data sheet is the minimum expectation. Clearly, additional PPE can be required by the company, but the SDS is the minimum. To that point, there will likely be individuals using chemicals, including disinfectants, and PPE that have not routinely used or been trained on their use in the past, so making sure that you have conducted and documented the related training with any affected employee. For example, sometimes it's overlooked that a commonly used product, such as alcohol, is very flammable, or that sodium hypochlorite, aka bleach, is highly reactive with acids and should never be mixed. The minimum PPE that CDC has recommended is aimed to protect the mucous membranes of an accidental infection. The use of impervious gloves like nitrile, a disposable apron or gown, and some form of mask and eye covering should be donned. Just a few comments specifically on the chemicals we were relying on for disinfection. But before we discuss the chemicals, a couple quick points of review regarding some chemical jargon we are hearing a lot these days. First, a sanitizer and disinfectant must both be used on a visually clean surface. If a surface has residual soil, and in part because of the low concentrations, the solution will not likely be as effective, which could be dangerous in this situation. So visually clean surfaces are a must. Now, there is a distinct difference as well between sanitizing and disinfecting that is being missed. Sanitizing is all about reducing the bacterial load on a surface to a safe level, but it is not intended to reduce spores or viruses. Their claim is primarily regarding vegetative cell populations, and importantly, after their use, a small amount of the microorganisms. Disinfectants can and many times be the same chemical just at a higher concentration or longer contact time, but can eliminate all vegetative cell populations, except for spores. In order to kill spores, typically a sterilant is needed. Now, to specifically talk about some of the chemicals and watchouts, first understand that sodium hypochlorite, or bleach, is commercially available in a number of different concentrations. Household bleach is typically around 5.25%, but industrial concentrations can be between 8 to 12%. So before following any recommendations on mixing solutions like X volume of bleach to X volume of water to create a disinfectant solution, it is best to know the original concentration of bleach. While talking about bleach, also keep in mind that along with other oxidizers, it loses efficacy over time. In a concentrated form, that means bleach should be used before its expiration date. And then once diluted, typically it should be used or disposed of by 24 hours. Check if the disinfectant that you are using has an expiration date and abide by it. Now, bleach is not the only recommended disinfectant that can be used against coronaviruses. Others, such as isopropyl alcohol and hydrogen peroxide, are also very effective, if available. Regardless of the disinfectant, it is important to keep in mind that the contact time of the disinfectant with the surface is important and should be monitored. In the case of bleach and alcohol, it's typically 1 minute, which practically means the surface should remain wet with the solution for the entirety of 1 minute. In addition, if in the US, the EPA has a list of products that are maintained called List N, which is also believed to be effective. A simple internet search of EPA List N will bring up the most up-to-date. The regulations have not changed regarding sanitizing or disinfecting during this pandemic. Frankly, if you could not use a chemical or its concentration prior in a particular manner or application, you're still not allowed to do so now. Clearly, it is important to use only products that have both the proven and necessary efficacy, but also ones that can be used in a compliant manner. It is worth noting for the food industry that in the US, there are a few products that contain isopropyl alcohol that have been both proven effective against coronaviruses and carry an EPA no-rinse registration. Finally, as with any chemical use, I'd recommend the full documentation of each application, meaning the date and the time they were used, the concentration, the user, and the application, as well as ensuring the training is up to date. In some guidance, there has been reference to a 24-hour wait period prior to cleaning after a suspected contamination with coronavirus. It's been recommended as feasible for non-essential operations. For essential operations, the wait is not necessarily a requirement, but we do recommend working with local public health officials. In the US, the CDC has clarified and said that the wait period is recommended when practical. Now, there has been discussion about the use of fogging as sterilant or a disinfectant and its use. Our opinion is that many of these products show efficacy on the benchtop, but we recommend using caution when over-relying on these products in the real world. If considering them, work closely with a reputable supplier that has experience in your industry, especially true if you're in the food segment. Also, do your own validation efforts, potentially even during the treatments, to verify the treatment. Most of the vendors will use spore indicators strategically placed in the space, and I would work with them to select locations to challenge both the niche areas or places at different heights, and also distances from the treatment source. At the end of the day, even if it doesn't have the same efficacy as in the lab, it still might be a good practice to assure everyone that is working in the area that measures are being taken to protect employees as well as possible. A potential exposure typically means having greater than 15 minutes of close contact or being within 6 feet of an individual that has been confirmed or suspected to have the coronavirus. The time frame of having contact is usually 48 hours before the individual originally became symptomatic. Now, clearly, our goal would be to prevent exposure by utilizing the prevention efforts that Richard covered in video number 2. So first, recognizing there is a delay from the test to the results, actions can be immediately taken while awaiting those results. The chief concern we are addressing is the spread amongst employees, but also their reassurance that they would not sicken one of their loved ones because they came to work. Consider the reactions of everyone when employees become aware that a fellow employee is confirmed or suspected with the virus. The company's actions need to be aggressive enough fashion to reassure the remaining employees that they do not need to be concerned when they come to work. Among the initial steps would be to confirm that all the precautionary protocol were in place and to make the local public health department aware. Next, review whether the additional disinfectant and social distancing or separation practices were in place, and then determine if additional disinfecting and distancing is needed based on where and with whom the employee works and interacts. Consider drafting a communication to reassure employees, or even meeting one-on-one with them to address employee concerns. With all this said, it's important to note that to follow the recommendations of the local health department. Depending on the scenario in your area and the facility, different measures may be recommended. A few final thoughts regarding the execution of any disinfection associated with the cleaning of a suspected case of COVID-19. First, remember that the goal is to ensure that the environment is and is maintained so that it does not spread the virus. Equally important is to make sure that employees feel safe and protected in that work environment. As mentioned, it is important to document your disinfection routines and the communications. When you do take actions, consider how they will be received by anyone working in the area. Consider how the company will communicate with all stakeholders. Most companies are now holding daily COVID-19 staff meetings to monitor both internal and external developments. Just make sure that you're relying on the facts versus speculation or opinions. Externally, does the plant have a local public health contact? Also consider a daily or weekly employee communication. Be as transparent as and keep in mind that everyone has a different concern or vantage point when it comes to this virus. Another good practice we have seen developed is conducting mock contamination exercises. Ask a supervisor, how would they immediately handle a particular circumstance? Provide feedback and use them to improve the facility and the company response. Repeat the exercise using different scenarios and learn from them and create a schedule of when you'll conduct them and with whom. Review the responses as a team and as a staff to ensure ongoing progress. In summary and review, there are many aspects or considerations when addressing the remediation of a COVID-19 contamination in a facility. The remediation starts with making sure the proper PPE is available and the employees are trained on its use. Next is to understand the guidance and recommendations on the chemistries that are being recommended. Can the disinfectant be used in the facility in the manner intended? Also, while keeping in mind that all the disinfectants are only effective on visually clean surfaces. Next, remember our goal with remediation is preventing the spread of the virus while also reassuring everyone that the facility is a safe place to work. Finally, remember, when executing the day-to-day actions and/or remediation event, that purposeful consideration is taken towards documentation. If someone comes back and reads the documentation at a later point, will they be able to understand what specifically was done, by whom, why, and when? While this topic is rapidly evolving, these basic aspects of any plan will be critical towards a successful remediation.
The situation with COVID-19 is evolving, and we are learning more about the virus on a regular basis. For the most up-to-date information, you can visit the World Health Organization website or your country, local health agency, or your trade organization. Thank you for listening, and please do not hesitate to reach out to CFS at our website, www.commercialfoodsanitation.com, if you have any questions.